Hello, Brandon here with Minnesota Blockchain Initiative. This is the MN Blockchain Conversations podcast from the Quantum Lex studio in Minneapolis. And this conversation took us into the belly of the cybercrime beast, guided by a Minnesota police sergeant stepping up as a leader, taking on these crime rings, and saving Minnesotans victimized by these frauds. Officer Jake Tuzinski of the Brooklyn Park Police Department shared how he started looking into these cold cybercrime cases involving cryptocurrency. He explains these scams, who these scammers are, and, in some cases, what it's been like corresponding with them. Finally, he talks about what it's been like helping the victims, and what you can do to not become one. Enjoy. Officer Jake Tuzinski, thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah.
We're here to discuss cybercrime, scams, fraud, and all that, and how crypto is used in these operations and what we can do to protect ourselves from it.
Absolutely.
You're a police officer where?
In the city of Brooklyn Park.
Okay. And how long? How long have you been there?
Okay, so I guess I've been with Brooklyn Park since 2019 or so, January or so. I started off actually in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Oh, okay.
But I'm from Brooklyn Park, and that's what originally drew me back home.
All right. So there was an opening there, and you took it.
Yep.
Or you applied
exactly.
for it. Okay.
Yeah.
And like, what's your familiarity with that type of crime?
Yeah, sure. So I think, speaking to myself personally, I think I've been a crypto enthusiast anyway since about 2017 or so. And, I've been a police officer since 2012. And so when I first got interested in crypto, I mean, a lot of it just made a whole lot of sense. I actually started off documentary Banking on Bitcoin is what kind of got me hooked on it. I saw it and it appealed to me and it made sense. And I really liked the methodology and the means of Bitcoin and how transactions can interoperate with each other, and really like the permissionless and the censorship resistance to it. Yeah, is what really drew me to it. And so kind of fast forward to getting into crypto and kind of going through that whole market cycle. And I think like everybody, every newbie, especially in that time, as the market dies, you kind of like trail off a little bit. It's still in the back of your mind, but whatever. So I get to Brooklyn Park in 2019 or so, work for a couple of years, and I see a couple of crypto crimes just like as myself as a patrol cop, taking these calls for service or whatever. I have at this point some more familiarity with kind of, Bitcoin transactions, how they work. And I know they're not all completely anonymous, kind of like the early day mythology was of it.
How do you encounter these crimes?
Yeah, typically like from a patrol standpoint, which I was a patrol officer then. I got promoted to a patrol sergeant, but it is through the 911 system initially. We don't have we do have online reporting now, but a lot of these, we have some kind of at least suspect information, whether it's a pseudonym of somebody who scammed the person or not. But a lot of it comes just through your everyday 911 call for service.
It seems like 911 is being used for everything.
Everything.
Is that appropriate?
Yeah. I mean, we really don't have any other means in place for anything else. So yeah, I mean, the Hennepin County Dispatch does get overloaded with calls, but there is no like really non-emergency call number.
Oh, okay.
So 911 is just kind of the catch-all, and calls would get prioritized. Like, Hennepin County might have 10 people on the line, and what calls they choose to send to a dispatcher will depend on the information the call taker is getting. So a cryptocurrency scam is going to be a pretty low priority on the emergency level of my house is getting robbed right now. And that's kind of how they prioritize what to send out, which calls when, and even what officers are going to pick up which calls come out.
Okay.
But
so someone called 911 because they figured out they were the victim of a scam.
Yeah. Yeah. So how I really got cooking in it, I had just gotten promoted to a supervisor position, and this was probably 22 or so early in there. And, people of course have known, as anybody in Bitcoin, like the first rule is you have to talk about Bitcoin. So they all knew like I was into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and all that kind of stuff. And so they come to me and they're like, hey, I just took this scam of this guy, lost $250,000. He double mortgaged his house and did that. I'm like, man, that's terrible. And I'm a patrol sergeant.
And
so
that's an actual example?
Oh yeah. Yep.
This happened here in the Twin Cities?
In Brooklyn Park. Yep. Yeah. So he did that. And, as a patrol sergeant, it's not really like our lane to follow up with investigations. That's what the investigations division is for. So kind of the next day I just check up on it. I'm like, man, like, cause I was kind of curious in my own sense. I was like, I wonder what we do as an organization or as policing in general, like with cryptocurrency scams, what efforts we put into it, whatever. And I looked and it was inactivated, meaning like nobody's ever going to look at it ever again. And I was like, that just didn't sit right with me. not only
it was inactivated within a day.
Yeah, within a day. It's just on a note, never land. And I didn't take super well to that, mainly because one, this person has been a resident of 25 years or so. He's paid taxes, he's got a house. He made some bad decisions with this scam, but that's kind of like what we're here for. So I started just kind of like took that and started following up on it as best I could. I started kind of tracing it out, and I started networking other like law enforcement resources across the country. And eventually,
is this above and beyond your duty?
Yeah, as a patrol sergeant, yeah, certainly. And there's also a little bit of nuance there because I also do run the risk of like the internal politics of stepping on toes and rubbing some people the wrong way. But I feel like there's certain times in certain places where, like, tough cookies, you have to. Yeah,
is it unorthodox for an officer to work on an inactive case?
Oh yeah, I would say so. And especially like these ones here, like, and I don't know, like I will say my administration has been super supportive of that because they are like very progressive and very creative. If you have like a thoughtful process of how to do something or how to fix something for the better, they're all ears. Like they're very much not the organization to be like, well, this is the way we've always done it. So like, just, shut up and take your patrol calls kind of thing.
Sure.
They're really good about that.
Did you notify them? Hey, I'm going to look into this inactive case. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep. So I kind of let them know. And most of the time, like if you do give a heads up like that, nobody's really going to get robbed. Like they don't care. They're not going to anyways. Like you're not hurting anybody's feelings kind of thing.
Why was it inactive?
I assume because there's just no technical knowledge of how to follow up with it. People assume it's just like green dot Visa cards were a huge scam 5-10 years ago or so. And those are essentially like, there's nothing you can do because it goes to a prepaid Visa debit card. Once the funds are spent off that debit card, there's no returning them. And a lot of it was overseas, Africa, that kind of stuff. So people see money that they can't subpoena a bank for and they're like, got nothing we can do. And I'm like, well, I don't think that's quite accurate. So long story short is I just hopped on a Block Explorer, just a public one. And lucky enough, probably for this first case, I followed the Bitcoin, the UTXOs a couple times, and blockchain.com had the final address as Binance. And I'm like, cool, I know Binance. So then it's just, okay, how do I figure out how to get legal service to Binance? I figured that out, got the return, and boom, there's the whole...
Got the return?
Got the basically like the customer information after my legal service was served to Binance. Binance says, yep.
So because you're an officer, they gave you personal info.
Exactly. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So we'll send either like subpoenas or search warrants to these exchanges. They'll process it, and we'll do it based off kind of how the transactions work.
What year was this?
2022. And
was Binance prompt?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, Binance has always been very cooperative. They are very pro, like...
Was this Binance.us?
Nope, Binance.com. I think that was even before the Binance.us split.
Okay.
Could be mistaken on that. But,
okay.
Binance.com. And so I get the return, and that gives you the customer information, the deposits. You can verify all that stuff. And, unfortunately, this case, it was still kind of a nowhere because they basically swapped out the Bitcoin to a stable coin, and then they withdrew it to a Nigerian native currency. So Nigerian banks won't be compliant with us. So we're kind of up the creek there. But I think the big takeaway from that case was not only can we do something about it, but that really gave me like the foundation to investigate all the ones subsequently that came in.
Before that, your superiors didn't know that they could go to Binance or look on the Block Explorer and see where this money had gone.
Yep. There's just no knowledge of it whatsoever. Everybody, honestly, like we joke about it as like the magic internet money, but that's what it is to still a lot of law enforcement, local. And, people say like, oh, why don't you just go to the feds or, doesn't the FBI or Secret Service do this or that with it? And the reality is like, if it doesn't hit a threshold, generally $2 million or so, no Fed is going to take it. We all have bandwidth issues and capabilities and we all have staffing issues in law enforcement. And so it's really incumbent on local law enforcement that if we're going to actually combat scams, we have to do it from a local perspective because not a lot of many people are losing $2 million in one clip. Or if we're going to aggregate a case to get to over $2 million to send off to a federal agent, we're probably not all getting that within the same jurisdiction, especially in our Twin Cities Metro agency where you can throw a stone and hit 4 different police agencies. For us, we have Crystal, Robbinsdale, New Hope, Champlin, Brooklyn Park, Osseo. all within a mile of each other.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be really tough to get these cases aggregated where you have a common suspect that you could actually package a case to a Fed.
So why won't Nigeria work with you?
Yeah,
the Nigerian banks.
It's an interesting question. There's especially from the state or local level, like when we write search warrants, it certainly has different weight and different meaning than a federal search warrant. They just won't honor local search warrants. They just generally won't respond. They don't have to. There's no legal obligation. They're in a different country. Even Binance.com doesn't have to. They will because they recognize like we don't want fraud on our platform. We don't want to be associated with scammers. They're like everybody else who has good motivations and good means in crypto that we see this as something good for society. And so they want to cooperate to get that mainstream, that mass more adoption. So we can actually progress, world finances. But yeah, Nigeria, I don't really have a great answer, but.
So what happened with this victim?
Well, he's up the creek. His money is gone. It got cashed out to Nigerian Naira. And, the one silver lining is that, it gave me and now like kind of the more broader Twin Cities metro area, like a foundation or a grounds to really start to expand our capabilities. Because like these scams haven't stopped coming. I think this last year in 24, we had about 25 or so scams come in, probably $5 million worth of loss just in Brooklyn Park. We're not, as far as median cities income go, like we're not affluent. And some of that is I will assist other agencies through investigation. So I kind of like also tack that onto our aggregate loss. But I mean, that's a lot of money in a lot of cases. And I get hit up a lot from other agencies or from victims.
Because you've become a leader in this? I've
kind of become the leader of it in the law enforcement community, certainly locally. And I've kind of developed a framework. I've had some successes. I've had some times where I've been able to actually trace the cryptocurrency, get a search warrant to seize it, and then have the exchanges send it back to us and then return it to the victims.
Tell me about one of those examples.
Sure. I think one of my favorite examples, and one that's kind of strange because we wouldn't really think about it, like people not in crypto, is there's a scam going around for a while where you're on your computer, whatever, pop-up comes up, kind of a tale as old as time in the scam world. But you have a virus, click this button, call this number, so on and so forth. Woman, she's probably mid 60s to late 60s, retired on SSI, fixed income, the whole nine, in a pretty low income part of our city. And as fate always has it, she's got a million other things going on. She's got this hip surgery going on that she's got to get to and whatever else. So she's on the phone trying to talk with who she thinks is this IT support person. Well, it's actually a scammer, and they're saying, okay, yep, looks like the scammers are trying to compromise your bank account. You need to log in and change your credentials or whatever.
So the scammer tells her that they're scammers.
Yeah. Well, no. Yeah, exactly. The scammer is saying, hey, somebody's trying to put a virus on your computer. These are the steps you need to take. We can see from our end that they're accessing your bank accounts. Okay. You need to log in and change your credentials.
They're really terrorists, aren't they?
They are. Honestly, they are.
They like that's their tool is to instill terror.
For sure. And it's 100%. It's a fear-based campaign. If you don't do this, this will happen.
It's not just like fooling people. It's planting fear or in some cases romance.
Yeah. Oh, very much so.
Is that what got the guy who mortgaged his house?
Yeah. Yep. It was a romance scam. Your kind of classic pig butchering. And like, so the term is pig butchering. So it's kind of like fattening up the pig to slaughter. So like that's when you go to romance, you start kind of loving them up, lovey-dovey, that kind of stuff. You keep investing. Eventually they run out of money. And that's when you send the pig to slaughter. You cut them off, so to speak. And now you just seesaw contact and, they're left high and dry. And a lot of cases, it doesn't turn out. People don't have the correct mental state after something like that. Not only are they ruined financially, but, they had this emotional connection that they thought was genuine. And that just cripples people.
Yeah, we could go into that a little more. Actually, I did a story about romance scams a long time ago when I interned at the St. Paul newspaper.
Yeah.
And I talked to an FBI guy then, and I met a woman who had a support group for victims.
Yeah.
This is before crypto.
Yeah.
My at least my crypto days. So just the psychology of that and the international aspect of it. But anyway, go back to the success story.
Yeah, we'll definitely go back to the pig butchering though. I've got a lot of good insight on that as well.
Okay.
But this one, so she's got this hip surgery. She's talking through this guy, and the whole thing of it too is they eventually get you to download some kind of remote desktop software. So they either do it through the phone, through like what I've always seen is an app called AnyDesk. They always get you to get into your credentials, all that kind of stuff. But she downloads this thing that gives him essentially remote access.
Yeah.
He kind of lays in wait, right? So he's saying, hey, your bank accounts are affected. You need to go in, change your passwords, do all this kind of stuff. And this one, it was, I think, specifically related to maybe like a purchase that they said, like, sometimes it'll be like, hey, there's this PS5 purchase here. Did you make that or whatever? And she'll say, no. Okay. Then we'll refund this purchase here if you didn't make this purchase. And they'll look at her bank checking savings. They'll say, okay, click these buttons here. And eventually when the victim is ready to click submit or send, the suspect will add an extra zero and it'll be $5,000. And then they'll see $5,000 get transferred essentially from their savings to their checking or vice versa. The scammer plays on just kind of the naivety of the victim and will say, oh, we overpaid your refund. Look, we accidentally put $5,000 into it. The victim will look and say, oh yeah, here's a $5,000 incoming deposit. They're
from
like, hey,
where?
From essentially from the victim's savings or checking, either or. So they're essentially saying, hey, we're going to give you this refund. I'm going to send $500 back into your account for the PlayStation.
But where does that money come from?
From the victim's own accounts.
Oh, it does.
So yep. So they're remote into their account. They can see the victim has their, let's just say Bank of America for sake of argument. And they'll see they have $10,000 in their savings, $600 in their checking or whatever.
Okay.
And they will start initiating a transfer remotely from the savings to the checking.
Okay.
Have them set it up. They'll say, okay, yep, does this look right or whatever? Make the victim click submit. And then just before that happens, they'll add a zero. So now it's a $5,000 transfer versus $500. So after that happens, they'll say, hey, listen, it's no big deal. You just need to go to the bank, withdraw that $5,000, put it into a Bitcoin ATM, and then we'll walk you through the next steps.
Even though it was from their very own account.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yep. And like I said, it's kind of like a lot of these are just like crimes of opportunity. Like this lady she's frantic. She's not technologically savvy. She's in her mid to late 60s. She's worrying about this hip surgery that she's got to have tomorrow. Like she's just trying to get this done. Now she's concerned about a virus in her computer going down and her whole world being hacked. So it's kind of like a perfect storm of scam for her.
I imagine they're just like any marketer or salesperson. They perfect the script.
Oh, I mean, they are just the sweetest people. I mean, the victims are on the phone with them for 3 to 5 hours sometimes.
Especially if they're older and they don't know the first thing about Bitcoin.
Exactly. And they're like, well, I don't know how to do this. And it's, oh, hey, it's no problem. I'll help you through it. It's no big deal. I mean, I had one victim went to a doctor's appointment in between and the suspect just stayed on the phone the entire time through a routine doctor's appointment. And then they go to the Bitcoin ATM. And you think it's easy to say like, why don't you just hang up the phone? Or like, man, how could you not know that's a scam? I think it's kind of human nature that when we get so entranced and engaged in conversation that we just start to really focus on that. And we kind of lose our inhibitions of kind of like our guards and our defenses of.
It's like being in a relationship.
Totally.
It's hard to, like you said, you're invested, but also if you're afraid of what will happen, it's like waiting on hold and you finally get a hold of someone.
Yeah.
Have you ever been on hold for like, whatever, you're on hold for 17 minutes. Mm-hmm. You get through to the customer service representative and then something disconnects you.
No.
It's like, oh my God, now I got to start all over.
Yep, exactly.
Like, that's the last thing you want.
For sure.
So if you're afraid of having your bank account hacked, right, that is such a fundamental, like visceral terror that you are clinging to that phone call.
For sure.
I'm imagining.
Oh yeah.
So that's why you're going to, and then be grateful that they're with you through, like, you're going to wait while I'm going to the doctor? Oh my
well,
gosh.
and I think that's
you.
just it. They just get this mode of acquiescence of like now I owe you something almost. Like, you're so nice. You're helping me through this. And, my gosh, I've made this horrible mistake of sending the wrong amount, and now I'm wasting your time. And it really does just get into a vicious cycle.
Have you ever, and I don't know if it's like the kind of the, it's like we all, there's a part of us at least that likes true crime, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
even
for sure.
though these are awful stories.
Yeah.
Because, and there's of course just the general interest in criminals,
Mm-hmm.
right? Oh, what went through the mind of that
Yeah.
horrible, violent person, right? And so I often think about what is that person thinking,
Mm-hmm.
the criminal,
Yeah.
when they're fooling this person, like, and maybe I don't know how they sleep at night. Like I
Totally
really
agree.
don't
Yeah.
understand how they sleep at night.
Well, and there's
knowing what they do to people.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think as I've gone through these processes more and I've learned more and heard from other investigators and other people from across the country, you really start to piece together what is happening. And it is like a very coordinated and syndicated operations that are going on. Like very rarely is it like one random guy doing this. Like typically this is like,
I know. And it makes it even more appalling and
Totally.
like it's even disheartening.
Mm-hmm.
Like that there are people out there like that. And then they do it as a 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like
Totally.
call centers that do this.
Oh yes.
And so just, I mean, here in the US, we talk about like, how does a tobacco executive sleep at night? Or,
right.
Well, they got nothing, I don't think, because at least you can argue for, hey, people should have the right to smoke.
Yep.
I think there's an argument for that.
Totally.
All those scammers are doing, like their sole purpose of existence is harm. Just
to steal money.
It's just to ruin people's lives.
Yep. It is.
And I don't know how to exaggerate that's just kind of the disgust I have for that kind of life. I think people who defend them would say, or not defend, but explain it,
mm-hmm.
would say, hey, you know what? They got kids to feed. They got, if you were in their shoes and you didn't have hardly any money or whatever. But it's hard. It's hard. That's a tough thing for me to get my mind around.
It's really tough to square, and it becomes hard too, because I think there's also, like, when I talk to general people out there, it gets very easy to also like blame the victim of like, how could you be so dumb to send crypto and Bitcoin? Like
that's all over the internet.
It is.
I don't have a lot for those
very
comments
distasteful
either.
It's like, man, just they can't put themselves in their shoes, and you never wish that upon them, but you almost just like, if they could just spend a day in like that person's family member's shoes, of their family member who just lost their generational wealth through a scam that they thought was a virus on their computer, that they're just trying to do the right thing, and who have otherwise been good and decent working people for the better part of 50 or 60 years. So it can be tough. It can be frustrating. Circling back to that story, that one was a success. That one I was able to trace out, and luckily it went to OKX, who was also compliant with us.
Okay.
Another fairly medium-sized crypto exchange. But even that one was probably pretty close to getting evaporated. They had just swapped the Bitcoin for USDT on the Tron network, and it was just sitting in the account still. And that's really too, like when I kind of try to balance like my enthusiasm and my passion for cryptocurrency with law enforcement of like, okay, this is censorship, permissionless, all this kind of good stuff, these good ideals. These people don't have ethics. They don't have standards, but law enforcement side, like, we have to. And if I can't, ethically say that this is my victim's money, like, I'm not just going in there on a goose chase trying to take money back, because otherwise you don't know. And, you could say there's always the argument out there of like, well, who cares? They're stealing from people. Yeah. But like, I don't base my standard of morals or ethics on somebody who I think is morally depraved. So I hold myself, and we should all hold ourselves to higher standards. And, this one I was able to confirm, okay, here's my incoming Bitcoin deposit. They give me also their swapping trading history. I can see my amount of Bitcoin gets swapped for this amount of USDT. This amount of USDT still goes in. Were there any withdrawals? Nope. Then we're good to go at that point. So that's kind of like the methodology of how you can really even assess whether or not your victim's funds are still there,
Sure.
or if you need to follow out that next withdrawal.
And how long had it been that they were sitting there on OKX?
Only a few days. And this was probably later in 2022 or 2023. And this was like very early days of U.S. local law enforcement, like really kind of starting to get some traction on this. Nowadays, it doesn't stay there very long.
Yeah.
Probably not past a day or so.
Yeah. And so the money was, how was it returned?
Yeah. So the exchanges, as well as like us as a police department, we really don't get in the business of like converting assets. So the exchange doesn't like cut us a check or send us a USD value of it. They will send us the cryptocurrency on the blockchain.
Who's us?
Brooklyn Park, the police department.
So you have a wallet?
Yep. So I actually kind of set up and designed like our own police department policy for retention and storage of digital assets.
What do you store it on?
Ledger Nano. Yep. So we have our own Ledger Nano, and to kind of coincide with that, we also have a strict policy of where that's stored, who has access to it, who has to be in the room when everything's being transacted.
Boy, you had to come up with a whole new protocol.
A whole new.
Did you author this?
Yep. So I kind of wrote that, and I just kind of wrote it based on very like common sense principles. And we do similar practices. Like if we're returning a large amount of cash, like there's no one single point of failure. There's no one officer who's like both checking it out of evidence, counting it, and giving it back. It's the property officer's checking it off. I'm signing that I receive it. If I'm counting it, I will have a supervisor with me or whatever. Then we return it. Obviously we're also body cam recording everything. So a lot of it was just kind of like taking some of these kind of, again, fiat principles and applying it to a crypto world. I think the tough part is having somebody else who understands what you're doing. Like, how would somebody reasonably know if I'm doing something corrupt? Like, they're just watching me.
Well, do you have colleagues on the force that understand this?
Yeah. Yep. So that was like kind of like the next step of now I have to start training some other people.
Yeah.
Because also too, like I can't just be a one-man band. I get hit by a bus and the whole thing goes by the wayside and people are up the creek again.
Yeah.
So we don't want that. We don't want that single point of failure. So yeah, started training other people, started training other agencies.
People were interested.
Oh yeah.
Officers were interested in.
Yeah. And,
helping.
The interesting part about this kind of stuff too is it can be competitive in law enforcement to get specialized units. We consider like investigations or detective work kind of more specialized. So it's like if you're a patrol guy, how do you get this investigative experience without being in investigations? It's kind of like the chicken and egg scenario. And this gives patrol guys kind of like an interest in, what investigations would consider like a lower interest or lower priority crime. Like we can run with it as patrol guys. They can get experience writing search warrants and doing all this stuff and these investigative measures that if they go into an interview, now they have something to draw upon and they can, better themselves, better their community, all that kind of good stuff. So it's kind of win-win. So OKX sends it back. I basically like write a letter to the account holder, suspect, saying like, hey, this is who I am. This is the case that I'm investigating. These are the actions I took. If you want to contest it, you're more than welcome to. You need to contest it through Hennepin County Court, and we can have a hearing about it. I give them 30 days to respond. If they don't respond, I kind of, at that point, I take it as, hey, you're essentially like a no contest. Like you're not contesting it. A lot of times I get responses of saying like, I don't contest the seizure. Thank you. Please allow them to unfreeze my account.
Who would contest it?
The account holder of OKX. So when I'm seizing it and it's in OKX.
Oh, so the criminal.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to send them a letter.
Yep.
How do you even know where to send it?
I sent a letter to their verified information that they signed up on the exchange to.
And where was that letter sent?
Via email to, I can't remember the email domain, but it was their email address that,
okay.
Again, reasonably.
I thought you meant like physical address.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, typically I will get like address information, but you just really never know, especially with international addresses, how to do that. And then the cost of sending that internationally, is that worth it? And we can reasonably send it to an email domain that I know that is good and valid because they wouldn't put it on their cryptocurrency exchange.
Yeah.
If it wasn't.
Do you ever hear back on those?
Oh yeah. Pretty regularly. I'd say probably 50-50. But some of them, all they want is their account unfrozen so then they can get right back at it. Like they really don't, it's kind of like Walmart. Like they expect some theft, some loss, right? Like, but they know on the whole, they're going to make a pile of money. So kind of same thing with them.
That's that bizarro though twist.
Totally.
Where they're looking at themselves. You just compared a theft ring to Walmart.
Yeah.
Which some cynical people might say is accurate. But, but right. You have one, above board, for profit. They hire 1 million people across the world, and you've got these underground but they probably in there, they'd probably somehow cognitive dissonance. They see like, we got a little loss there, little shrinkage exactly. Or whatever they call it.
Yep, exactly.
Anyway, again, there's that psychology that I'm just taken back by, but
I know it's wild. It is
wild. And you see a lot of these in Nigeria and other places too.
Yeah, I think the main 3 distinct regions I see is generally like out of Nigeria. Mm-hmm. There's India / Dubai or UAE, because it seems like the people who sign up on exchanges who are in India or are Indian citizens operate out of UAE, specifically Dubai. And then the biggest one and probably the most appalling one is like CCP sanctioned Southeast Asia, out of like Thailand, Myanmar, these kind of areas. Really, really disgusting. Like when we talk about call centers and all that, and how do these people sleep at night? Well, these people mainly are there under threat of torture, execution, human trafficking, rape, like the worst things you could think of, they are faced with.
Or if they don't do these scams.
If they don't do these scams. Like they are put in front of an office, I'm probably sure half the size, or there's 4 people in here, and they just have a wall of phones in front of them, and they are just scamming all day, every day, for hours. And they have quotas to hit. If they don't hit quotas, they get tortured, they get threatened, they get beaten. If they're women, they get raped, all sorts of just terrible atrocities. And there's some pretty shocking like Google Maps, like aerial imaging of this and just show you like the scale and also sadly like the success of this operation, where there's a river that runs along the border of Thailand and Myanmar. And 2022 or so, there's like, you can see like one, it's kind of like a steel building warehouse looking thing. And by 2024, you see this one building and this huge open field. And now there's about 40 of these buildings. And they're just all scam compounds. So it's, that for me is like a distinct separate ring altogether from like the India and Nigerians. Like I think they're doing it purely out of like their own selfish greed. It's probably like, people who are known to each other, friends, business people, whatever you want to call them. Whereas like this one in China, Southeast Asia is purely like a criminal and human rights like operation. Just really bad.
Wow. Well, that's like cartel, like
very much so.
Gang, underground criminal behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's pretty shocking. And there's a deputy district attorney out of Santa Clara, California. She actually just recently retired. Her name's Erin West, and she's been like really front running this charge to like expose and get awareness out about specifically like the Southeast Asian, these rings. And, she's gone and filmed from, I think on the Thailand side, looking over Myanmar, because you can see like there's Thailand, totally fine, normal country, river. And then right across the river, you can see like it's just giant prison factories. And she talks a lot about, like the rituals they have when they get a big score and there's a big fireworks festival or parade or things like that. But yeah, it's pretty atrocious what's happening kind of in that. And I think it's unfortunate that crypto is like the medium for that. I don't think that would not be going on like if crypto didn't exist. So I don't blame crypto at all.
Right.
But it is, I don't know. I wish there was something more we could do like stateside or from.
Why isn't there? Because there's no diplomatic relations between us and Myanmar?
I think so. Well, I think more so China. I think that whole region is probably more so under the thumb of China than
you said CCP sanctioned.
Yeah. So Chinese Communist Party. So they essentially are allowing it to happen. They're probably getting a cut. There's obviously kickbacks from, these gigantic scam factories, and all throughout these scam factories, they have different like casinos and all this other kind of stuff that they're running money through to, not like untraditional money laundering. To take these dirty bills. Oh, I put it in blackjack and I bought some chips, played a couple hands, and went and cleaned it out. Yeah. Here's my money. It's clean now.
Yeah. So, I actually know the region. It's the Golden Triangle there. Laos is there's where those three countries come together.
Yeah. Yep.
And they're building casinos. I was there in 2015, but that was with actually a school trip.
Really?
With some Hmong students here in St. Paul that went back there to visit the refugee settlements that they were from. And I went along to document it in 2015. So it was like, it was about Hmong culture and roots and all of that. And, a lot of their families had fled in Laos and gone into Thailand across the Mekong River.
Yep.
But we went up to that Golden Triangle area where those there's maybe two rivers, but the three countries come together.
Yeah. I'd be curious to see if you had any pictures or photographs of it then, and compare it to what it is now. And
they were building a casino there then, and I thought it was kind of odd because, like, there's not a lot up there.
Yeah,
it's obviously like Bangkok and Phuket, and they're all on the coast. They're all on the ocean there, and up there far north of Thailand, it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, but.
It's interesting, and I think too a lot of it is these people get there under like the rouge of like, hey, China, without getting too like, I'm not saying I'm a geopolitical expert on China, but from what it sounds like is there's significant depression, lack of opportunity, lack of jobs for your common person, and the whole ruse is, hey, come to Thailand, come to Myanmar. I'm working at this place. It's great. We have benefits. We have this, that, or the other. They get there and it's right in the scam factory.
So you think most of the actual scammers, the ones on the phones, and that is a real twisted twist, because who are the victims here now? The scammers are the victims.
Yeah, I mean it's something I think about too, because like I know too, like I've had a couple cases where I've had some successes where I've gotten some money back, and it's like, man, okay, so I got some money back from this account. I wonder if this person is getting negative repercussions because of that. So it's also like,
because you didn't get that money off of OKX fast enough.
Yeah.
So now you're in trouble because we had that shrink.
Exactly. Yep. And does that go against? And does that go against their weekly, monthly quota that they may have? It's wild. So it's like, it's like in one hand, I'm happy for my U.S. based victim, but also thinking about
I'm seeing
what is this other person experiencing?
I'm seeing a movie here where you split screen it, and you've got the American victim just crushed and the scammer elated.
Yeah.
And then when the American gets their money back, they're elated. But the scammer isn't just upset because they didn't get their score. The scammer's upset because now from above, they're going to get beat. Yeah.
No, absolutely.
And that, wow.
Yeah. And
and you're a Brooklyn Park. Yeah. I always get Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park mixed up.
Yeah, right. Border 2 doesn't help.
You're a Brooklyn Park police officer, and now we're talking about China.
Yeah.
Right. So like, what a world.
Exactly. I know.
But people are probably a little frustrated listening to this, wondering what happened to the person who got their money back. So let's wrap that up.
Yeah. No. So ultimately, the person who got their money back and had the hip surgery and all that kind of stuff. Eventually, so there was some money recouped from the Bitcoin ATM because they were good actors and refunded at least the fees that Bitcoin ATMs charge that we can go into later as well. But then also the money back. So she was made almost completely whole. I think it was $7,500 somewhere in there.
Okay.
And that was something too that she expressed that she ultimately was going to use it. This was savings because she's on a fixed income, that she could go see her dad in Canada who'd been sick, and the plan was to go in 2021. Well, COVID kind of put a hijinks on all of that. So that money was gone. Now she's like, well, I can't go see my dad. She's 65. You can do the math on, he's probably also getting up there as well. Not really sure how many times I'm going to be able to get north to see him. So that was pretty cool. She wrote me a really nice card saying like, hey, I got to go see my dad. It was great. We had this wonderful family trip. So
were you in touch with her when you got the money back?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm guessing that's one of the better days of your job.
Man. Yeah, for sure.
So what did you do when you got word from OKX that the money's being refunded?
Jumped out of my chair because it was one of the first times too that it actually happened. You're like, because too also internally, I'm getting told that this is the next green dot scam. Like nothing's ever going to happen. Like, also kind of like poo-pooed of like, this is never going to go anywhere. Why are you wasting your time with it? And then when it does come to fruition, it's like, I care less about the ego or the reputational aspect, but like seeing her get that money back was.
So like, then walk me through that. So then did you just turn right around and call her?
Yeah. So I called her, kind of let her know. I was like, hey, I got the money back. These are kind of the steps. Cause again, like this is untried, like untested. Like there is no Supreme Court case law that we can rely on of like, these are the steps that we take as officers. So like the whole 30-day letter thing, I kind of like also too, like borrowed that from what other agencies across the country have done. And like, is that reasonable? Would I find that reasonable? I think so. 30-day notice to contest it. So that's what we did. So I let her know, hey, I'm going to give this guy 30 days to respond. If he responds like, hey, I don't care, you can have it, then we'll give it back to you. Otherwise, if not, we'll wait for it. It could go to court. It could be several years before you ever get this money back because that's court. So eventually this person did respond and said basically like they just want their account unfrozen. So they said, as long as my account gets unfrozen, I don't care. And actually wrote me like a thank you for your service, which is kind of weird.
Very professional.
Very professional, yes.
Why would OKX unfreeze the account if it's been known to be associated with? Yeah,
and they may not. They may shut it down. At that point, it's like my involvement, my fingers are kind of out of the pudding in that sense. So I think they'd probably go through some internal reviews and whatever AML or anti-money laundering and compliance type stuff that they have. They'd probably work through. And I'm guessing, if I was betting, if they're compliant enough to respond to U.S. law enforcement, seize funds, all that, they're probably shutting down that one account too.
Where's OKX out of?
I think Seychelles is where they're incorporated out of. Where they're actually headquartered varies. A lot of crypto exchanges incorporate out of Seychelles, just out of East Africa there. And 50-50 whether or not they're compliant.
Yeah.
Some aren't. Bybit like won't even respond to us, or you have to go through a Seychellian authority who doesn't respond to you either. Like I've tried to call them, I've tried to email them, and they just won't. So, and to file a Seychellan police report, you have to be a citizen or have been married or in a relationship with a Seychellan citizen for 10 years. So there's not really a good avenue for us U.S. law enforcement.
There's no incentive or at least there's not enough incentive for the exchanges themselves to want to, at least not all of them, to want to work with you.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Yeah. I think so. I think that's the case. And maybe it's unique to like, Bybit is a predominantly leverage trading site. So maybe, they're more of in the casino world than the crypto enthusiast. We're here for the tech kind of exchange. And so maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. I guess I can't speak to them too much.
So when you got the response, then what? Then you were able to release the money.
Yep. So then I told her, I was like, okay, so here's the next steps that we need to do to receive this. Because like, again, I want to help you as a person, but I'm also an agent of this police department, and I can't put our police department in some compromised position where essentially like, I don't want to be a money changer. Like we are not an exchange. So I can't convert this USDT into US dollars, cash out from Coinbase, and then cut you a check. Just something that we want to do to get into the whole tax implications or whatever else may come with that. Just kind of a muddy business. So essentially, like I kind of tell her, listen, I can help you with this. However, like you'd have to sign a letter saying if something catastrophic were to go wrong, you can't hold me or Brooklyn Park Police responsible. Most people are obviously like very willing to do that. And so like I'll come in and sit with them, have another person with me, and we'll go through and like I'll explain to them fully like, okay, like this is what you need to do to set this up. Do you want to do this? Are you sure you're comfortable doing this? And typically it's like set up a Coinbase account, yes, they ask you for your ID. I know it seems kind of weird, but it is like the modern way of doing things. You know, you link your bank account to Plaid. I know that's not how elderly people typically do things, but it's okay. And then once they do that, I'll kind of help them generate the receiving address for the Ethereum, and then send them USDT right from there to their Coinbase account. And then I'll show them how to cash it out. They cash it out. And then if they want, 99% of them do, just delete everything. So then I'll help them unlink their bank account, delete their Coinbase account, delete the app, never have to worry about cryptocurrency again, and kind of go from there.
And never want to see the word crypto again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a lot of them.
A lot of them. So how many have you been able to retrieve their money? Yeah,
so I would say I'm probably at about like 50 to 60 cases or so. I bet I'm probably only between 10 and 15 where I've been able to get money back. One or two of them has been like kind of half. You know, somebody lost 60 grand, I got 30 back. Better than zero, but you know, there's one right now where it's still active, but this person lost millions in Bitcoin, and you know, right now I'm at probably 10% return rate. It's still ongoing, but it's tough. It's a very complicated, complex one that is unlike any other scam that I've seen.
Can you give a summary?
Yeah, and I think this one's probably good for the crypto enthusiast because I think it really drives home the point of like not your keys, not your coins kind of thing. So this person actually had all of their crypto holdings on the Coinbase wallet app. Yeah. So not the Coinbase app, the exchange platform, but their own proprietary wallet software. Kind of same thing as the woman with hip surgery. He's on the phone dealing with some other stuff, some stressful stuff. Sees an email come through needing to update his Coinbase wallet app. Clicks the link, not even really thinking about it. Gets some other notification of funds being sent out from his Coinbase app. Looks at it, starts panicking, is trying to call Coinbase support. To no avail. They're like, we don't see anything going on in your account because they don't actually custody or have anything to do with their wallet app. So eventually all of his funds get sent out, and that was September that all the money moved, and even now there's still 11 Bitcoin withstanding that are just laundering along this trail.
And how did they access his wallet?
Yeah, that I'm not entirely even sure on. He got an email, Coinbase clicked the link, so I assume it's some kind of malicious or phishing link. Granted remote access to his wallet app and or exported his seed, or I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah.
Because also immediately after, he went and deleted all those emails naturally. So I couldn't really exactly forensically see like the whole trail of what occurred. He basically was just able to give me like what his wallet addresses were, and then I could see, okay, here's when the transactions occurred, here's where they went out.
Yeah.
And then kind of followed it from there.
This was a guy in your town?
He's actually in a different jurisdiction, but I'm kind of assisting the home agency through that. So kind of part of that is kind of cool. So the Minnesota BCA is kind of like the statewide FBI, so to speak. And so they have a financial crimes task force that if your city signs a joint powers agreement, basically like saying, hey, we'll be teammates, then you can assist other agencies, serve outside warrants, investigate. So that's kind of like what grants me authority outside of Brooklyn Park to follow up, to write search warrants for that case that didn't occur in Brooklyn Park. So kind of cool, kind of helpful.
But it was in Minnesota.
Yeah. Yep.
And are you able to speak much about the case? Like where it's at, who the scammers were, or anything like that?
Yeah. So I have a pretty strong idea on who the scammers are. It's mainly been run through exchanges. The main scammer is the proprietor of a smaller, you've probably never heard of, decentralized exchange. Well, you've heard of a decentralized exchange, but this one specifically, I won't name it because it is still active. But it's like a very small decentralized exchange, or so it purports to be. And they're taking the money. They're probably using a wallet software similar to like Electrum or Exodus, where essentially speaking to Bitcoin specifically in the UTXO model, you're sending a small amount and then the rest gets deposited to a new Bitcoin address as change. So there's this 43 long string of 20 Bitcoin that got laundered out. And what I'm surmising is the smaller decentralized exchange has accounts on larger exchanges. And that's really all it is. So they're sending their money into these larger exchanges. I subpoena the larger exchanges, serve warrants, and they'll say, hey, this is actually, we're just a liquidity provider for this exchange. Contact them. I contact them and it's like the most rinky dink, 2-bit response ever. The legitimate exchanges have legitimate compliance in place. They have people, they have solid record keeping, all this kind of stuff. I've asked them for stuff and it's like, oh yeah, I'll like literally say like, I'll get back to you on that or whatever. And it's like one line kind of thing. They don't really know what terminology they're using. They talk about, oh, this money was sourced from our node. And so I'll say like, okay, so are you saying that you're mining and that you're running a node and this was generated as like a block reward for solving a block? They're like, oh, we don't know, like that's too technical of an issue. We don't know what you mean. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, you're technical enough that you have a decentralized exchange, that you have liquidity pools across 6 or 7 different exchanges, but you can't define to me what a node is or understand what it is. So this one is like out of Eastern European over there in that region. Very interesting. It's very sophisticated on how he's moving it, but he's not sophisticated in...
you think you're corresponding with the actual scammer?
Yeah. I think so. It doesn't seem like it's that large of an exchange where you would have multiple employees or a huge ring. The transaction patterns, like when they occur, how they occur, are all very similar. Like one person is doing them.
And he has to get back to you because he's trying to run a legitimate business.
I don't know if he's ever trying to run a lot of his reviews of the exchange.
Well, he's putting up a front of having a legitimate business.
Exactly.
So this is why he's responding.
He's responding also too, because in my search warrants, these exchanges, I'm asking them to also, hey, like freeze this account. Because I'm probably going to write a search warrant to seize whatever funds are in there, as long as I can talk about before, like as long as I can say.
And
yes,
these exchanges that are run through Seychelles or whatever, they'll listen to a U.S. law enforcement officer to freeze an account. Yeah. Because they want good relations with America.
They do. I mean, it's no secret. Like
I'm just trying to understand the incentives here.
Yeah,
because,
we are the
no
financial...
one's going to come, bust down their door and take them to jail if they don't comply.
Right.
Probably.
But which is kind of one thing I'm working on with this case specifically, and one other one that trying to change that. But
if they're in the EU, then maybe there's more of an agreement of how to work with them. But I guess
and so what I've learned too, because you get all kinds of information from these records, places they've been, places they've logged in from, that kind of stuff, and they're going to EU countries, and so my hope eventually is to work with an AUSA, assistant U.S. attorney out of like Minneapolis or somewhere else to actually get like an Interpol notice served against them. That essentially is like an international arrest warrant. That if he does get to an extraditable country, they'll snatch him up and ship him back. So getting pretty hot on his trail. I think he's unraveling pretty good. So I still got some legwork to do, and the biggest concern is there's still 11 Bitcoin out there. The rest has been laundered out, but
it has. And are you up? And are you in touch with the victim? Like so have you told the victim like, 9 of them are gone and we're never getting those back?
Oh yeah, I mean that's one thing. Like I'm very upfront with him. We talk probably weekly because I mean, if you lost that much Bitcoin, you'd probably be like,
so he lost
what's
20,
going on?
20 Bitcoin, was it?
40. And
the hope now is to try to get 11 back.
Try to get 11 back, and or also, I think my long game on this is if I'm able to present a strong enough case to an attorney, they would say like, yep, we'll charge it out. And with these charges, there's all sorts of agreements that can be made. Does he get charged with 100 counts of money laundering, or if he's cooperative and agrees to restitution or give the money back.
You've identified this scammer?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So you got the name?
Got the name.
Oh.
Got his name, got his ID, his date of birth, where he lives, know where he's at.
Wow.
Know where he's at. I mean, to be frank, like if he was local, he'd be in custody.
Sure.
Like if he was stateside.
Sure.
He would.
Wow. And do you tell the victim who it is?
No, because I think that does kind of cross like an ethical line.
I would think so.
I don't want some vigilante justice going on.
Yeah.
Again, like I don't know their financial status or their history or capabilities, whatever, but I imagine had you had that much money just sitting on a cell phone, you probably have enough money to facilitate some other transportation to another part of the world and whatever. I don't know, not get into that business. So,
wow.
And I think it could just compromise the case in general.
I would have been surprised if you would have said yes to that.
Yeah.
What kind of talk about consoling the victims?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard, and I think a lot of it too, they don't even like understand what they happened. It's not funny, but it's interesting to see. Like as I'm talking to them, like that initial interview with them, they're telling me what happened, how it happened, and of course, I've heard it 24 times before, and almost every single one of them, like the second they hang up the phone, like when the Bitcoin ATM transaction is completed or whatever they've just done, the second they hang up the phone, it's like that switch flips, and they're like, "Oh shit, I've been scammed.
What have I done?" Oh, that's when really,
and that's like what it is, and they are in just like such a trance. I would say most of them are fairly realistic about like, it's kind of sad that people are so pessimistic. Like I'm never getting this money back. Like it's never going to happen. So like they kind of understand that the money's gone. But I don't think it ever like feels good. Like that doesn't help them at all. So regardless of whether or not I'm ever like able to recover their money, like I'm always at least upfront with them. Like, listen, I'm going to work on it. Like it's not just going to go sit in a graveyard and die of police report.
That's what they used to do.
Yeah,
I guess
for sure. Yep.
From how 100%. This conversation started.
Yeah. Yep. And it still happens, across the country at other local agencies. I mean, like there is a percentage of like, we have to be somewhat realistic of police department's capabilities. So I think that at least gives some people some solace of
because
like,
most of them come to you thinking it's already
like they're like, hey, like I'm doing this because my mom told me like I should file a police report. So I'm just like going through the motion, so to speak.
I bet there are people who don't.
Oh, absolutely. I bet probably a huge majority of it do not report it, I should say. And some of it I think is the romance aspect, and maybe they have current engagements where, the significant other maybe wouldn't appreciate these conversations going on. I think more so though, a lot of it, because I don't really see a lot of like the romance type scams. I see a lot more of like the malware phishing attacks. There's another one that I'll segue here in a minute, but a lot more of it is just like these phishing attacks. And we had a really huge run on our elderly in like 2023, 2024 timeframe, where they were getting hit really hard with these scams. And I think it's just naivety to technology really that got them. But I think one aspect too that I've seen kind of recently that's really popped up through across the country is, and it's not a new scam, but it's like the threat of the arrest warrant scam. There was a guy in Brooklyn Park who over the weekend got arrested for DWI, had to go to jail, got booked in, whatever, and got released 2 days later. And I'm not even sure like if they're just always checking jail rosters or what. But scammer calls this person and says, hey, if you don't pay $2,500, and they purport themselves, they said, hey, this is a totally fake name too. Hey, this is Sergeant Strickland from Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. I'm letting you know that if you don't pay this $2,500, your license is going to be revoked for 2 years. Well, for a normal working person, like not having a driver's license, that's a huge deal. So what are you going to do? Okay, like this guy from Hennepin County Sheriff's Office is saying, I need to go pay this money. Put it in this Bitcoin ATM, of course. So that one actually happened twice in Brooklyn Park, a couple times in Hopkins, and has been a huge nationwide ring that ironically is run out of a prison system in Georgia.
The country.
No. The state. Yeah, the state of Georgia. So it's run out of prison systems locally here in the U.S.
It was.
Still is. Still is very active. And they're
How?
I think the prison systems, people still have access to Wi-Fi devices. They get computer time. When they call people on the outside, they're setting up these people and these patsies, and they have a whole network of people inside and out. But a lot of it is being run through the prison system, through various inmates.
That just ruins any like hope I have of controlling.
Yeah, I know.
That is the most controlled environment.
Well, and I think it too, like in humanitarian and social service ways, like, okay, we're the goal isn't to punish and enslave. It's to reintegrate them
Right,
into
but every
the community,
call is monitored. Every email is, maybe not email. I don't know. Maybe it is.
Yeah, I obviously not. Certainly, I guess not down there. I guess I can't really speak. I've never been a jailer, so I can't speak to like what happens inside a pod or a cell. But it's interesting because the investigation is actually being run not even out of Georgia, but out of a federal field office in Florida, because there's been so many victims in that jurisdiction. So there's an investigation on it, and eventually it will all collapse. But
boy, that's a YouTuber's dream of a video there.
Yeah.
Scammers from inside a prison.
Yep.
In the U.S.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, I would say, anybody out there.
Man, what a powerful example or illustration of how the digital world is just too unwieldy, fluid.
Yeah.
For our system of
and I think too,
security.
Even that, like, people can be down about crime, civilization. People always sometimes will comment negatively about Brooklyn Park in the city and like, oh man, that's a rough part of town or whatever. And I kind of tell them like, it's really not. 95% of our people are good, decent, honest people. We just so happen to spend 95% of our time with that 5% who are not. And I think that's probably the same way with the prison system too. You're incarcerated, you're locked up. You're probably not that bad. There's some accountability that had to have been had. Hopefully you get reintegrated into society, but there will inevitably always be people who take advantage of systems.
If you would have told me that there was a series on HBO about a prison that ran a scam ring, I would have said, oh, these writers are just ridiculous.
Yeah.
They're making up such nonsense.
A scam out of a prison system involving Bitcoin, but,
okay. So, well, I have a question about, I guess you and the name you're making for yourself.
Sure.
And whether your precinct is developing a reputation, and if it's something that's, because you talked before about how, some of these cases would just be thrown by the wayside, but not in our jurisdiction, because now we know we have a protocol and we've got some minds behind this. So are other cities police forces coming to you and asking you questions about, hey, how are you guys doing this? Is this becoming a thing where Minnesota is becoming a leader as a state, or your city as a leader within the Twin Cities? Yeah,
I think definitely. I really don't want to take all the credit because I've had so much help from outside sources. I mentioned Erin West before. I mean, her team, they have a very high tech task force out in California called React. And they're kind of like, for sure, the pioneers of this. And she was always there for me to like be a sounding board, and I would bounce ideas off. She'd be like, yep, you're on the right track. And
she was the one that went to Thailand?
Yes. Yep. So she actually has, she retired now just this year, a couple weeks ago. And in true Erin fashion, she's not like stopping the fight. Like, she's not just going to sail off in the sunset. She actually started her own organization, like that's like very victim centric, called Operation Shamrock, where she's trying to like continue to, like, her motto is like educate, seize, disrupt these scam factories. And so like she's really going all in on doing just that. So like having her as a resource through like my early goings of like getting started and and all that was critical. And that really helped me develop my framework and, methodology of tracing cryptocurrency, policies and procedures to put in place, kind of all the ancillary things that, we have to account for as a police department and liability speak, that, other people would be like, well, why don't you just go get it back? And it's like, well, there's these other processes that we have to have in place. So after I kind of like really felt comfortable doing all that, I developed like a training curriculum for other agencies. And I got it. Our state licensing board is called the POST board, Peace Officers Standardized Training. And so every police officer has to have so many post credits every year of continuing education. And so I got this training curriculum approved through POST. So, agencies will be more apt to send them because, hey, you get post credits and it's free. So I did that. I trained probably 120 to 150 cops from different agencies all across the state now. I've held the training class about 4 times or so.
Where?
At our police department, at Brooklyn Park.
Okay.
Yep. So we have a pretty sizable training room. And so we can come in and accommodate, anywhere between 30 and 50 people at any given time. And kind of through that.
And that is the most like advanced training of its kind here in the state?
Yeah, I would say so. And it's always tough with cryptocurrency because one, like I was fortunate enough in 2022 to like have some intro into crypto. Like I kind of understood generally where it is. Well, with this, in 8 hours, I have to try to pack in like what it is, what its consensus model is, how you can trace it, and like what are the ethical, legal, policy ramifications to do it. So it gets pretty tough, but it at least gets people like a foot in the door. And then like I'm always a contact or resource for them. But a lot of these guys have gone out and taken it on their own, and they'll reach out to me a few times. Like there's Brainerd and Savage and Candiota County, who's doing a lot of good stuff now with it, that have come through my training course. And like even that in itself, like one, it takes some of the work off my shoulders. Like I don't feel the burden of having to help them because they're taking these cases on, solving them, getting them to go themselves. I imagine
some technologically minded detective or officer, like the sleuth in them, is like, oh, this is a challenge. Like this is enjoyable in the like discovery, solve the crime kind of Sherlock Holmes way.
I think that's what kind of does it for me. Like apart from naturally enjoying cryptocurrency, it is like that puzzle aspect of it, of like piecing it all together. And when I talk about the one that's still active, it's like,
wait, when you found his identity, you must have been just like, I got you.
Well, and then it's like, like everything else too, you have just stacks of documents and these different returns that you've gotten from exchanges. And it's like, then you start to think about one other thing and then you're like, I got to check everything else now. And then you find like the link between this whole other aspect. I'm a patrol guy still.
So how is that? How has that worked?
It's been tricky. I do a lot of it on my own time too.
You do?
Yep, I do some of it on my own time.
Are you like the meme with the guy with the cigarette and the board with the?
Oh yeah, I got the Charlie Day board behind me. No, for sure, and I mean it does help. Like so, the BCA, when I talked about their financial crimes task force, like it's a huge burden to agencies to pay overtime, right? Like wages and employee like is always the number one cost of any business. But like through that task force, they will actually pay overtime wages. Which helps. So like if I need to come in on a day off and write a search warrant or whatever, my agency doesn't have to foot the bill.
Okay.
As much as they want to see success and want us to do great things and all that, again, like they have 100 different responsibilities and budget is always a concern.
You kind of have 2 jobs.
A little bit.
Because you'll be doing this work, but then on any other given day, you might be out writing a speeding ticket. Yeah,
potentially. Or like, me, I'm in charge of our field training program with another sergeant. So we've had a huge hiring push last couple of years. So I always got some administrative duties, but, the thing with the crypto is it's not necessarily always like I have to do 4 hours today to do it. Sometimes it's like you have to act really quickly now for a half hour and get to the next point. And then you can kind of stop, take a breather or whatever. So it's fluid in that way.
Are you vying to become a detective?
I don't know.
Is that how that works? I've always wondered that. Like when I saw a cop movie or cop show And it isn't always about how old they are.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the detectives are older,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes it's a young detective.
Yeah.
And you think, well, how did they get to be a detective so soon?
Right.
And why is the old person still out on the street writing, parking tickets?
Yeah.
How does that whole thing work?
Yeah. I mean, I guess speaking, so I've worked for 2 different police agencies and it's about the same. Generally it's like there's an opening in a unit. So like we have general investigations or major crimes or one we call special investigations. And when there's a unit, it'll be open for 2 weeks. You can apply. There's an interview process, and then whoever comes out on top comes out on top. Generally is how it goes. But I don't know. I also too, like, I think I love police work and I love patrol as much as I do because it is such a level of variety. Like there's something different every single day.
Sure.
And one thing that makes it tough for general investigators and, you know, like, not to justify it or whatever, but like why cases get pushed to the wayside is because every day of patrol that comes on, we probably have 150 calls for service in Brooklyn Park. And that's probably 100 cases that have to get split up amongst detectives to investigate. So at any given time, they have 20 to 25 cases that they're just juggling just to try to stay, you know, keep their head above water. And so like they really are just like triaging as best they can of like where can their means best be used. And not everybody can have the technical expertise, especially in cryptocurrency, that we can just willy-nilly assign these out to everybody. So
have they said, hey, we need you to spend less time out there writing speeding tickets. We need you to be in here doing more of these.
No, not really. But they also too, like, they give me a lot of autonomy with my time and they trust me to manage it. And that's, I think, a huge strength of our police department is that, you know, they instill a culture of that trust and that autonomy. Like they know that we're all out there going and doing the right thing, that we're not just out sitting in a parking lot watching Netflix kind of thing. Like they know, like, if somebody's on duty, they're on duty, they're working. And so they don't really question like, hey, I saw this came through, this huge long report on your work shift while you're supposed to be out on patrol. Like they're not concerned about that.
Have you, and we got to get wrapping up here a bit, but why don't we end with like public facing, you know, you've taught other officers. I'm not sure if you've talked to the general public about what to look for. But I guess if you had and you have a microphone here, so you are, I assume the audience would be fairly general. Most of them here in Minnesota. Like what would do you have kind of a prepared or just off the top of your head, if nothing else, like some things to look for, some like words you would tell the general public, like, boy, if they just knew this was going on, they would do this differently. They would have a password manager. They would never pick up the call if it said this. They would never open that. You know, what would you tell people? Yeah,
I would say first and foremost, like the number one ethos is not your keys, not your coin. Like have something, don't have it on your desktop extension wallet. Don't have it on your phone, just readily accessible. Don't have it necessarily on your exchange. You know, I don't think we're probably going to see another FTX style type collapse, but that's kind of the example I use when I talk to police departments and how are you going to custody seized assets? Yeah. You know, I don't think Coinbase is ever going to go the way of the dodo, but if they did and you had some money on there, your city could be out all that money if you lose a court case or whatever. So I would say that, basically anything that tells you to or directs you to a Bitcoin ATM is likely a scam. Nearly 100% unequivocally, probably a scam. You know, Bitcoin ATMs, and there's some new legislation that requires Bitcoin ATMs to provide refunds to victims who report the scam within 72 hours to their police department. Up to the full amount too. So if they put in $5,000, they have to refund the $5,000.
Oh, there's just going to be a scam on that then.
Probably.
Someone will send the money. They'll say, oh, I got scammed. They'll get the refund and they'll get the money that they sent.
Well, and there's already, the ATM company's already working some loopholes because the scammers will have them put it into
so you got to think like a scammer.
Exactly. But that's actually good law too. So like if you have friends, family members, whatever, and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I put this money in the Bitcoin ATM, whatever. Tell them like, hey, you need to make a police report now because they can get that money back without any investigative work. Now, granted, the Bitcoin ATM company is now the victim at that point, but that's a different beast all in itself. Apart from that, stay away from your normal phishing links. If your family member is going to withdraw cash, do not allow them to be on the phone. Tell them, if they're talking to somebody on the phone about anything and they're going to a bank or whatever, never do bank transactions while you're on the phone. Your mind's just too occupied. It's locked up. And sad thing is, like, the banking industry, they're not really saying anything to these people. They're not like making them hang up the phone or doing anything like that, which is frustrating because that.
How do you know if who you're talking to is a scammer or not?
Well, I think one easy way to say would be to just hang up, call the police, and just ask them, like, hey, I think I'm talking to a scammer. What do you think? Here's a phone number.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do that? Or inversely, this can also be kind of dangerous because I've seen this as well. I would Google that company or go to their known verified site, go to their contact us, and then I would initiate that call with that company. Make sure it's not a sponsored result. Make sure it's legitimately their one, because I have had a victim look up, like, they just Googled generally Xfinity customer service number. The first sponsored result was a scammer. And it was the scammer's phone number, and that's how he got
a call
scammed.
from Google.
Mm-hmm.
I picked it up.
Yeah.
I Googled the number that came into my phone.
Yep.
It was a Google number.
Yeah.
So somehow the scammer got the number to come up as Google's number.
Yep.
So I thought I was talking to a Google person.
Right.
So that was a scary moment for me in October of just a couple months ago.
Yeah.
So in that case, I was foolish because Google would never call me with this news to say, hey, there's a vulnerability or an exploit on your account. So that was my right. I should have known better about that.
Sure.
Right. So is that something that you might tell people
too?
Like, hey,
absolutely.
If your account is being exploited, they're not going to call you and tell you. Is that true?
Yeah. I mean,
I guess I don't know all the protocols.
I think generally, I think bank fraudsters generally will. But for me, like, if I'm getting an email or something, like, I'm going to a trusted spot first. Like, I would log into my online banking on a different computer or device, verified, and see, like, was there actually a fraudulent transaction?
Sure,
Is anything pending?
Sure.
And if there's not, no. Checking the metadata of the email, because it'll come in, a lot of times it'll say like Bank of America or whatever. But if you actually kind of click and scroll down a little bit, it'll have like a domain that's not Bank of America.
It's so
some little nuance type
scammers
things.
Don't send the crappy scams as a cover for the good ones.
Yeah.
Because when you see so many crappy scams that are just laughably stupid.
Yep.
There's like spacing of the words is off.
Totally.
You'll see typos.
Yeah.
It's like, this is not an email from Google. This is ridiculous.
Well,
and
that's
you idiot. How did you think you could fool me? And then I get a phone call from a good scammer, and then I get fooled.
Yeah.
Like picking up the call because I'm like, well, it's not as stupid as that one email full of typos. It must be real.
Well, I think that's the tricky part too about today's AI is that, like, we're not seeing that like that's off syntax, a lot of the old Nigerian emails, like the Prince of Nigeria scams that were 10, 15 years ago would be like, sir, please kindly send me this. And like, we're like, nah, nobody talks like that. But now, like, with ChatGPT or any other AI service, you can be like, talk like a Midwestern American in this
and that's
in this
a thing
manner.
Too. That's a thing too. Like the person who called me from Google.
Yeah.
He sounded like someone from Minnesota.
Totally.
He sounded like a white guy from Minnesota that I would have met in college or known where in my small Minnesota hometown.
Right.
I mean, I was really, these scammers can be really, really good.
They're good. And they're only getting better. So we just got to be more diligent.
Well, thanks so much for all your work and for coming in to talk about this.
I really appreciate the platform.
People will have questions that we didn't cover, that I didn't get to. So, are you available for people's questions?
Of course.
Do you take those direct?
Yeah. Yep. I can take them direct. That's totally fine. They can send them to my work email address. That's no problem at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put all that in the description of the video. So yeah, people can reach out to Officer Tuzinski.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course.
Jake, thanks so much for coming by
Thank
today.
you. Appreciate it.